Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon. Yellowstone didn't revive the Western genre on TV, it killed it completely. While plenty of people have praised Taylor Sheridan's Yellowstone for reviving the Western genre on TV, the truth is, it didn't revive it at all, it may have actually killed it. With the glut of content across network, cable, and the myriad number of streaming platforms out there, it's hard for any show to truly break out in a big way. Plenty of shows are temporary flashes in the pan, but have little lasting impact. It's even rarer that that show spawns multiple spin-offs, as Taylor Sheridan's Yellowstone did, becoming an entire universe. There are a few mega-producers working in TV who have created sprawling universes, whose names immediately come to mind. Dick Wolf, Shonda Rhimes, Greg Berlanti, Ryan Murphy, etc. Taylor Sheridan is now one of those names, with everything he touches seemingly turning to gold. With that success, Sheridan has been anointed the new king of the neo-Western genre. But while it's fair to give him his flowers, it's not quite fair or correct to say he saved the TV Western. The Western genre may have been thriving on the big screen for the past few decades. Since the turn of the millennium, the genre has experienced a bit of a revival, with several Western movies, both period pieces and more modern-day retellings, seeing resounding success, whether critically, commercially, or both. Among others, those movies released since the turn of the century include. The list is far longer, but those films are just a smattering of modern movies that have successfully reinvigorated, and in some cases, reinvented the Western genre on the big screen. While the genre may not be the powerhouse it was in the glorious golden age of Westerns of the 50s and 60s, it's hardly disappeared, and when a movie in the genre is released, whether theatrically or on streaming, it tends to do well. The Western genre on TV, on the other hand, has had a much greater struggle to revitalize itself in the past few decades. It, like movies, had a golden age on TV through the 50s and 60s, with classic Western shows that still hold up today like Bonanza, The Lone Ranger, Gunsmoke, and Rawhide, among others. Huge Western stars of older eras also transitioned to TV at that time to great success, such as Gene Autry and Roy Rogers. By the late 1960s, however, there were no new Western TV shows being greenlit, and by the early 1970s they were done. A Vietnam War-era American audience just wasn't interested in the seemingly old-fashioned genre. Since then, the Western genre has struggled to reinvent itself for the TV medium in a way the Western has never had an issue with in movies. There are far fewer pure Western offerings in that medium in this century. Deadwood, Longmire, Justified, and Hell on Wheels come to mind. Possibly a few others. The rest, however good they might be, are not true Westerns, but other genres blended with the trappings of a Western. Yellowstone seemingly changed that. Taylor Sheridan's show has been a juggernaut since it premiered in 2018 and put the TV Western back on the map. Its ratings were through the roof, and it became a rare water cooler sort of show that created buzz and conversation after each episode. Yellowstone's pop culture impact was so immediate that it actually created a huge influx of wealthy people moving to Montana, which in itself became a problem for the residents in and around Yellowstone via CNBC. The Western, it appeared, was back, except it wasn't. Like the aforementioned shows that are Western adjacent, Yellowstone isn't actually a Western. Instead, it's a drama. Yellowstone's story beats are firmly rooted in the family melodrama, specifically the gangster drama in the vein of the Dallas of old. A closer modern equivalent would be Succession. Narratively, Yellowstone is far closer to Succession than to Longmire. It's closer to The Godfather than to Gunsmoke. The family infighting over an empire and a legacy, with rivalries, alliances, and betrayals forming the core of the series. That's a melodrama, not a Western. That's not to say that Yellowstone isn't great, or that it doesn't include definite elements of the Western genre. For starters, the Montana setting is classic Western iconography. The rolling plains, the mountains, the horses, the wide open spaces. It's the landscape we think of when we think of the classic Western. That landscape being encroached upon by increasing industrialization and a nature-based way of life being slowly pushed out by dubious progress and the advancement of the modern era is also a theme that can be found in the Western genre. The inclusion of Native Americans in opposition to the white man, particularly the dubious treatment they receive, is also a theme that underpins Westerns. In the case of the classic genre, Native Americans have been maligned as the other, as savages, Indians, and other pejorative terms used to frame Native American and indigenous people of the American West as violent and primitive people standing in the way of rightful white expansion. One might think that the success of Yellowstone can only be good for the Western genre on TV, but you could make a fair argument that that's not the case. The problem with Yellowstone is that it didn't relaunch the Western genre on TV. Instead, it launched the Taylor Sheridan Western-ish universe. Again, that's not a slight against Sheridan, who is a machine of a writer and clearly a savvy negotiator behind closed doors. But as all Taylor Sheridan shows come from his mind, they all tend to have the same flavor, and now he's being spread too thin. We're already seeing the drawbacks of that. His Yellowstone spin-offs haven't been as well received as the flagship show, with some of those spin-offs being canceled in development and others taking far longer to make it to screens than originally anticipated. Even so, networks and streamers aren't known for their brave swings. They stick with what works, and Sheridan works. So they've been more inclined to greenlight more Taylor Sheridan shows than to greenlight other shows that might actually be truer to the classic Western genre. For decades, the Western genre was a defining part of television history. From the golden age of TV with Bonanza and Gunsmoke to the revisionist classics of Deadwood and Hell on Wheels, the Western endured as an evolving, powerful genre that could be reimagined time and again. But then came Yellowstone, a show that many credit with reviving the Western for modern audiences. The truth, however, is far more tragic. Yellowstone didn't save the Western, it killed it, and in doing so, it has left television bereft of the genre's traditional themes, complexity, and spirit. The argument that Yellowstone revitalized the Western is not without merit. Premiering in 2018, the Taylor Sheridan-created drama brought in record-breaking ratings and introduced a massive audience to the Dutton family, a ruthless ranching dynasty fighting to maintain control over their land. With its sweeping cinematography, modernized cowboy aesthetic, and soap opera-level melodrama, Yellowstone became a cultural phenomenon. The problem is, it did so at the expense of the Western's very identity, mutating it into something unrecognizable. First and foremost, Yellowstone abandoned the moral complexities that made classic Westerns so compelling. The genre's greatest works thrived on the tension between civilization and savagery, law and lawlessness, progress and tradition. From the white-hatted idealism of early Western heroes to the anti-heroes of spaghetti Westerns, the genre explored questions of justice, vengeance, and the cost of power. Yellowstone, however, reduces all of this to a blunt force narrative in which the Duttons, despite their wealth and unchecked influence, are framed as perpetual victims in an unfair world. The show revels in its characters' brutality without ever meaningfully interrogating it. Kevin Costner's John Dutton isn't a man shaped by a harsh and changing world. He's simply the biggest bully in it, willing to kill, maim, or ruin anyone who threatens his empire. Another way Yellowstone sabotaged the Western genre is by shifting its focus away from the frontier to dynastic power struggles. While classic Westerns often featured powerful landowners, they were typically antagonists rather than protagonists. Yellowstone reverses this dynamic, asking audiences to root for the billionaire ranchers who, in another era, would have been the villains crushing homesteaders and small-time cowboys underfoot. The series is more akin to Succession in cowboy boots than a true Western, replacing the genre's defining themes with corporate intrigue and backroom deals. Where is the exploration of untamed landscapes, the clash of different cultures, or the lonesome struggle for identity in an unforgiving world? These have been discarded in favor of political machinations and family betrayals more suited to a modern soap than a Western epic.